The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I am just so excited to be here with you. We had a little bit of a hiatus over the holidays. Some of it was sort of health imposed, and some of it was because we always take a little bit of time off at the holidays. And it's always interesting to me when we get a little bit of time off. I miss this so much because I miss this opportunity to have this format in which to talk with you guys and to have you guys. I miss your input. I miss you guys. I know some of you had written, we missed you, and I wrote, we missed you too, and I want you to know that we meant that, and I meant that sincerely. I miss the interaction. We all do. So we're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours, and we've got quite the show planned for you. Some of it is much to be revealed yet. But I want to remind all of you that this show is meant to be interactive, so that we do want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, your concerns. Samantha's going to show you some of the different ways that you can interact with us, some of the different ways that you can, if it's that you need to vent, if it's that you just need to shout out into the blackness. We love to hear from you. If there's something that you have to say or something that you're concerned about, this is a place, because I always say we hold hands. We get through this together. Si se puede, right? So don't just feel like you're alone, although I know as an autism mom that that's something that comes up often, and it can feel like you are on Mars by yourself. I just want to remind you that's what it feels like, right? It isn't necessarily the truth. That there are others of us that are here and thinking about you and wishing good things. And I personally want to help to connect you to good things. So Samantha just showed you some of the ways to connect. I also want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. Lots of things to do there. We're getting a retool. It's coming. It's almost done, and it's going to be very exciting. And you'll see on our new on our new page, it's much more like a channel, and you can see all the different videos instead of just seeing the live video. Although when you want the live video, then you can push a button and it goes full screen. It's pretty. I think you guys are going to really like it. And the live feature will still be there. That's where you can put your cursor in the box that says your question and type and hit enter, and it shows up here on my screen, and you and I can have a conversation in kind of real time, which is a very exciting thing. Of course, you can participate with us on Facebook, and I know a lot of you like to do that, but sometimes you just don't want people to know who you are. So when you want that anonymity, the live feature is the place to go. All right. I love that Barbara already wrote in and said, my son Charlie is 29 and is amazing. Barbara, I have no doubt that he is, and I love it when you just shout out and say that. It's a wonderful thing to put that out into the universe. Okay, so I do like to remind everybody at the start of the show always that we have experts on the show, and have I got some experts for you today? I really do. But I'm not one of the experts. I think we are one day away from having this be the 11th. I get my dates confused. 11 years ago, I think tomorrow, that my son was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And, that's a long time, and I've learned some things along the way, and I never want to negate that, but it doesn't make me an expert. Okay, let's be clear about that. But what it does make me is somebody who understands some aspects of this journey and how much it means to you, whether you're a parent, teacher, practitioner, or an individual who's on the autism spectrum, to get the resources that you're looking for. It's not one size fits all. So what you need isn't necessarily what the person next to you needs, but I know that it's important. And I want to be a part of the cheering team that helps to hook you up to those services and says, hey, did you know about this? Now, sometimes it's you guys telling me about something, because that's that thing, right? We hold hands. So, but that's, I just want to always be clear that, I'm one of those people who likes to, I have an opinion and I like to express it. And I sometimes, because I am so forceful and I have such a strident voice, that people assume, oh, well, she must be an expert. No. No, I'm a former teacher and I am a mom, and I've been on this journey for a while and have interviewed a lot of people. So I would say I'm well informed to an extent, but not an expert. Right? So I give you the experts. We bring them in here and they talk about the things that they have expertise in. But I think of me as the facilitator and the switchboard operator. That's what I am. And I'm your cheerleader always, because I'm always thinking and wanting the best for you. Okay, so having said all of that, on Thursday mornings, we like to start with a little warm up, something we call the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out, all right, what does this mean? And what does it have to do with me? And why do I care? And for me, my big questions are, does this save me time? And does this save me money? Because, man, if it's saving me time and money, then I'm interested. Okay, so every once in a while, we like to do some of the oldies but the goodies, and it's the first week of the year, so we have to cycle back to what in the heck is ABA? 11 years ago, when I sat in a developmental pediatrician's office, and I said, what are we looking at? And she said, yeah, autism. She had this very thick German accent. And I said, what do we do? And she said to me, take him home and enjoy him. That was her big, fabulous expert advice. I still have to make an appointment and go talk to her and maybe kick her with a pointed shoe. Take him home and enjoy him. We know that that's not what we do, because we know that I love Lisa Ackerman. She says, when they say autism, it's not game over, it's game on. And you got to get yourself together and got to do some stuff. I then said to this developmental pediatrician, no, come on. What about, there's got to be therapy. What about that AB something or other? I read about it online a little bit. It gets them to talk. What about that? And she said, oh, you mean ABA. And then she asked me to promise not to do ABA with my child, a developmental pediatrician. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's important that you use the right words and that you know what they mean when you're talking to experts. Otherwise, things get a little kerfuffled, right? So what is ABA and what does it stand for? Let's go to our actual definition of ABA. Often we give you the actual definition and I like to make fun of it. Not so much of this one. ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. It's the application of the principles of learning and motivation from behavior analysis. Well, that helps, right? It employs procedures and technology derived from scientifically demonstrated principles of behavior to increase socially significant behaviors and decrease unwanted or inappropriate behaviors. Now, I want to stop for just a second, and I want you to notice that it says applied behavior analysis. Now, when you're just starting out, it's really hard to remember those three words, and a lot of times people will say applied behavioral analysis. I have to tell you, this is one of those code things that people can tell if you know what you're talking about, if you don't. Because if you say applied behavioral analysis, then they know, oh, you're just somebody who's learning, you're a rookie. When you're talking to an expert, if you talk about ABA and you say applied behavior analysis, then you've crossed through a certain hoop and they know that you're a certain level of savvy. It's just one of those code things. I don't know what the big difference is, but I know it makes a difference when you're talking to experts. Now let's move on to our working definition of ABA to figure out if we can figure out what that socially significant thing is. ABA is a proven method of increasing or teaching desired behavior and reducing unwanted behavior. So think of as an arrow going up and an arrow going down, right? That's the way that I've always seen it talked about when you're really getting to the heart of what ABA is. Think about for yourself, what are some things that you would like to do or be better at? We all have things, right? We all have things that we're like, gosh, I'd really like to be able to do this, right? That's skill acquisition. And we're never done. And it doesn't matter if you're on the spectrum or you're not on the spectrum, we all have skills that we would like to acquire. And then on the other side of it, we all have behaviors that we would like to diminish or get rid of. All of us, right? For some people, it might be that they want to quit smoking. For other people, it could be, that they want to be less lazy, and so we want to increase exercise. That's both a plus and a minus, right? So that's what ABA is. But notice that in the first definition, it said socially significant, because with an autism spectrum diagnosis, a huge part, a key part of the diagnosis is having difficulties with social interaction and social communication. And if we can strengthen that, it is incumbent upon us to have it be meaningful. We don't want to just have somebody acquire skills for the sake of acquiring skills. And I know some of the criticism of ABA is that, well, do people have to make eye contact? And the truth is, no, they don't. But it's socially relevant. When you go to apply for a job, if you are somebody who is able to make a certain amount of eye contact, not crazy staring at somebody eye contact, but if you're able to make eye contact when you're shaking hands and when you're answering a question, it does, because the way it's socially significant, because of the way our society is built, it makes you more likely to be eligible for that job. It's just the way things are. Now, can you still get the job without making eye contact? Yes, in certain cases you can. But if we want to put best foot forward, then we want to at least teach socially significant things and why they're socially significant. And then if the person says, I don't want to participate in that, or that's too hard for me to participate in, that's an acceptable answer. But we would never want to not teach that. Of course, we're going to teach everyone how to shake a hand as they get older, because it's socially significant in the society that I live in. But let's face it, there are places in the world where not so much, right? So socially significant, that's what that means. So ABA helps to increase behaviors that we want to see and decrease other behaviors. Make a checklist for yourself and for your loved ones about what would you like to see increased and what would you like to see decreased. And really for everyone, it's going to be different, that list. So ABA should be different. There should not be cookie cutter. Where we're just going to do it all the same, right? We will see that with very young kids, they have a lot of the same skills that are significant for younger kids. But the older that individuals get, the more individualized it gets. And even with those very young ones, while there might be a lot of things in common, there are going to be a lot of things that are different. I will tell you that I refer to ABA as the autism miracle in my living room. Because back in the days that my son got ABA, it was home-based. Now, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders does almost exclusively center-based. And gosh, I would have loved to have had an opportunity to do that, because they see that the kids master things 80 to 85% faster when things are done in the center. It's an amazing thing. But we had home-based, and let me just tell you, that was pretty awesome. And it was the autism miracle in our living room. If you have an individual in your life that you care about that's on the autism spectrum, that's having difficulty in any aspect of their life, I want to encourage you to get some good quality ABA going in your life. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And if you are an individual who's on the autism spectrum and you are struggling, I would encourage you if you're watching this show and looking for things to do, you're probably an adult. I would encourage you, one of the best ways that I know currently that you can get some ABA into your life is take a look at a product called Skills Living. It's a computer program that gives lessons, and Skills Living is particularly just for adults. So older teenagers and adults. And there's a whole skills program, but I'm talking specifically about Skills Living. But you can find skills at Skills for Autism. It's not the number, it's FOR, autism.com. But ABA, pretty amazing. Okay, so that's our jargon for the day. And then moving on to our question of the day. We always have a question for you, and you guys can, if you feel so inclined, you can write into us either on our live feature on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever it is, and answer the question. What do you know for sure? If you watch the show, you know that I love Oprah. Oh, do I love Oprah. And if you watched when she was on the Golden Globes the other day, it gave me goosebumps. I've always loved Oprah. One of the first sentences that my son ever, full sentences that he said as we were coming out of autism was, Oprah is mommy's fairy godmother, because I would always say that. She's my fairy godmother. She shows up when I need her always somewhere on television and says something that shines a light for me and takes my path in a place that's better. So love me some Oprah. And years ago, Gene Siskel, you know, Siskel and Ebert, he, whenever he would interview somebody, he would ask them, what do you know for sure? And it was something that he asked Oprah, and Oprah felt that it was so important that it's something that she does when she interviews people now, and it's something that she says frequently in her life, what do I know for sure? That's why she said it in the Golden Globe speech. So I'm asking you, what do you know for sure? And you know, it changes over time. And as I was thinking about this, I always think about this at the start of the new year. What do I know for sure? And I'll tell you what I know for sure right now that I didn't know at other points in my life is that what happened, our journey was meant to be. I can't say that for anybody else, but I can tell you that I'm now at this point, 11 years, you know, 10 years, 11 years minus 1 day into autism. I now have moved into acceptance, and I know for sure that this was the journey that we were meant to go on. So much in our life changed as a result of it, and a lot of it was hard, but I know for sure that it was meant to be, that this is where we were supposed to be. And because we're in such a good place, thanks to all the intervention we got, I can say that I'm fully in acceptance of this is exactly where we're supposed to be, which is a very freeing place to be. I know it may not be where you are. I can tell you for sure that when we were 2 years into ABA, I would not have said that. That would not have been the place that I would have said. But now I know that for sure. So write in and tell us, what do you know for sure? I'm dying to hear. Okay, we're moving on to our topic of the week. Take a breath, everybody. Our topic is facing the hard stuff. And in just a minute, we're going to start to face some of the hard stuff. But you know, I always say to you that sometimes when we have to do a hard topic, I try to give you some sort of a treat at the end of it. I love you know, when we have the opportunity to do that. I've got a treat for you coming at the end of the show. We're going to play a video of Brett Myler. I've talked about this video before. He is one of the kids featured in the DVD Recovered. His mom, Bryce Myler, who I know well, she was told just to let him go, to put him in an institution because he was going to end up there anyway. And she said, no. And I'm going to look for it and find, and she found ABA, and then she found the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and Brett is an incredible human being. And the video that we're going to show much later in the show, towards the end of the show, but it is him at the age of 19 giving a speech to a huge room full of people. And if it doesn't make you go to the ugly cry, then I don't know what. But I mean the good ugly cry, when you're just like, okay, that's possible, sign me up. So we are going to face some hard stuff today. Let's talk a little bit about our guests on the show today. In just a few minutes, we're bringing in David Turk. And he's from Serenita's Special Needs Planning. I know it's a bitter pill, you guys. I don't like to talk about it either. But I want to say to you, we're going to talk a little bit about wills and estate planning and what happens when we die. As I told you guys yesterday, my plan for the future is to live forever. That's my plan, you know? And those, so far it's working for me. But one of the things that David's going to talk with us about is, you know, when we're ready to face it, how to do it quickly and painlessly and get it over with so that it's actually functional. But then he's also going to, for those, especially for those of you who have teenagers or young adults, he's going to talk a little bit about those funding sources that you can get that bring more money into your child's life and how to he's got some tips for a lot of you are frozen. You've written to me and said, I want my child to work, but if they work, then they lose their government funding. And what happens if I die and things don't go well at the job and they lose the job? I don't, you know, I'm afraid to let my child work is essentially what you're all saying. And I get it. David's got some tips and advice for us. Then a little bit later on, we've got Bonnie Yates, special education attorney, right? Facing more hard stuff. And then another treat that we're going to have in the second hour, we have Swathi. I'm not even going to try to say her last name. She is the mom behind Designs by Siri. Siri is a wonderful, fabulous young adult on the autism spectrum who makes fabulous jewelry. And her mom is such an inspiration. And she's got a new radio show that she's going to be doing that we want to help to connect you with. So all of that plus much more. And Brett Myler, and if we have time, we'll get to our mindfulness moment and maybe even autism in the classroom. All right, and some of your comments. So stick with us. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, a little bit of the hard stuff, not too much, I don't want to scare you, but a little bit about talking about how we set our kids up for success even when we're no longer here. It's important. Stay with me. I promise you a big treat. Better than ice cream at the end. Don't go away.
What would you do if your child was hurting?
If your family's future was uncertain.
If help seemed out of reach.
Have you been given no hope?
Taka means I am not alone in this.
This is the reality for families affected by autism. And today, the number of children with autism is growing more rapidly than ever. Taka unites these families and shows that they do not have to fight this battle alone.
Our oldest son, Jared, who has autism, when we first took him to the doctor to get the diagnosis, you know, it's so sad because they offer you nothing. There's no help, there's no hope.
One of the things that you learn with autism is being very grateful for even the small milestones. You know, when you first get the diagnosis, you go through all the range of emotions. You know, this can't be happening. Why is this happening? You have to get to a point where it's the emotion that has to be leading is, what can I do? The first thing that struck me was walking to a room and seeing, oh my gosh, we're not alone. And there is this very strong community that's already set. And something I still today associate with Taka the most is hope. To me, that's what Taka means. Taka means hope.
It's like you've got all these dreams and goals of what your son's going to do, and you get your diagnosis and you're sent home. And that's it. There's no plan of action. There's no, here's autism, here's what we're going to do to make your life better and help him. It's strictly go home and try to process it and go on the internet. It was devastating, and you just, you know, you go through this 3-week of depression and then you snap out of it. You have to. And then you start making phone calls and trying to figure out what is autism and what are we going to do. And then we found Taka, and it was life-changing.
Autism, there really is no definitive answer. It is trying to find the resources that are out there that can assist you to help your child so that, you know, you just don't feel so helpless at those particular moments.
There was direction and there was hope and there was a little ray of sunshine that he's going to be okay and we're going to be okay. I always look back and think we would never be where we are. Carson wouldn't be where he is at without Taka.
So 13 years ago, my son was diagnosed with autism, and that put our whole family into a tailspin. There were so many different ideas and things that were not proven. Nobody knew what guidance to give us. We had no direction. And then we found Taka. They helped give us a path to follow, help give our son a better future and make him healthy and put him back onto the road of recovery. When your son's first diagnosed, the first thing you hope for is, gosh, I just want my son to speak. I just want to be able to communicate with him in some way. Then you want a little more. You want him to go to a regular school. Then you want him to potentially have a real life and go to college. So you're always hoping for the future of your child. My son is a happy, healthy, vibrant young boy that's going to turn 15 really soon. And we couldn't be more pleased, and without Taka, I don't think we'd be in the place that we are today. We believe the future is not defined for many affected by autism. There is hope and direction for these kids and their families. Taka is dedicated to providing community, support, education, and hope to families affected by autism.
At Taka,
At Taka,
At Taka,
We are families with autism helping.
helping.
helping families.
helping families with autism.
Hi, my name is Matt. I am 19 years old and I was diagnosed with autism when I was 6 years old. Autism is one of the fastest growing developmental disabilities in the United States, but I am living proof that with the right treatment, hope is possible. My future is not limited. Today, I am attending Fullerton Community College and I run for the cross-country team for fun with my friends. It makes me feel proud when I think about my progress. Chances are you know someone affected by autism. Show them they are not alone and help others get on the road to recovery. Contribute to Talk About Curing Autism today.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I wanted to take just a quick second. You guys are writing in a bunch, and I just want to acknowledge that. Marcia, thanks for writing in and saying thank you. To Remco, who writes in and says, I'm a Dutch native. Could you explain what an autism mom is? And I'm so glad you asked, because this is a new bone of contention that technically there are those who are saying that an autism mom is a mom who is on the autism spectrum. And there are more and more of those. However, those of us who've been around a little bit longer have gotten very used to identifying ourselves as an autism mom. And when we say that, we mean that we are the mother of someone who was diagnosed with autism. It's gotten very confusing, and I'm sure very soon we'll all come to an agreement about what the terms mean. But usually, up until recently, people it meant that they were the mother of someone who's on the spectrum. But as more and more moms who are on the autism spectrum having children, it's going to get more and more confusing. So we probably should pick another term. I'll see what we can't come up with. And Barbara, thank you for writing in about your fabulous son. Rana, who says hello from Seattle. We lack ABA here. Been on a waiting list for my 6-year-old first grader. Did you check, because I believe that there is a CARD office in Seattle now. If you go to centerforautism.com, click on the locations tab. CARD is trying really hard not to have anybody on a waiting list for more than a month, and then you get started, and it takes a little bit longer before you start services, but there are things that start for you before the therapists are actually helping out. Definitely check that out. And you know what? If you cannot get ABA where you are, you can start with skillsforautism.com. Sarai says, hi there, I'm a 35-year-old woman with Asperger's syndrome. Recently, I have been struggling with dealing with the fact that I'm not able to form romantic relationships. Do you have any words of advice? There are many people who are starting to do social skill groups to help them in the romance department. We've got a lot more of that going to be coming a little bit later on in the year. And she also said, thanks, this is a lifeline for me here in Dusseldorf. We love that. My son is so wanting, he's starting to learn German. So I love it. Dusseldorf, I love how it's spelled too. Jennifer says, does autistic tendencies the same thing as saying the person has autism? No. In fact, we all have tendencies that would fall on the autism spectrum, right? So if somebody, if you were told by your psychiatric nurse that you have autistic tendencies, well, I would say that that probably means, like the rest of us, you have some things that are very specific to you, but that probably what they're saying to you is that you know, wouldn't qualify for a diagnosis. But if you feel that there are things in your life that aren't necessarily working and they're stumbling blocks, you might want to go and see, because this was a psychiatric nurse, she's not qualified to diagnose. You might want to talk to somebody to see if you qualify for a diagnosis. Rana says, ABA, what little we were able to get helped my son be more verbal and learn his letters, etc. But we still struggle at home. He clashes with his 4-year-old sister with possible autism. Let's remember that especially with little ones with ABA, you have to get the full prescription and you have to fight to get the full prescription. And when we're usually for kids that are under the age of 5, we're really talking about between 35 and 40 hours a week. If you can do 30, you know, that gets you in the neighborhood, but 35 to 40. So fight, fight, fight to get both of these kids, you know, write back and tell me what part of the world that you're in, because even if you can't get the services, you can do it yourself, and there are parents that are doing that. Sonia says, ABA is so hard to get, it feels like. Tell me it's worth it. Oh, Sonia. Sonia, it's everything. I just said it was the autism miracle in my living room. I don't know where I would be. And I do know where I would be because I have seen the kids that my son was in an early start program with. Please, please, no, it's everything. Between insurances and finding a place, it wasn't so determined. I'd given up by now. Our center's as good as in-home ABA. The truth is, we know the science is in. It's 80 to 85% faster if you do it in the center. The kids master things that much faster. Get center-based if you can. If you can't do it in the home, but center-based is the best. Science is in on that. And please, it's worth it. Sasha says hi, and that you like the topic. We love you, Sasha. Rana said, I love it when you talk to each other. Sonia, she said, center-based ABA is great if you can get in. It absolutely is. Claire says hello. Ferschetti says hi and thanks. Marcy, we love that you're watching. Rana says, please tell me how to get ABA if my son has been on the wait list for over a year. You know what? You can always email me and we can have a private conversation. s.penrod@autism-live. We got to get to my guest. Anyone ever struggle with denial or struggle when autism changes because kids change? When I'm home, it doesn't seem that bad, but when we get out there, then I see how behind my son is. I think that's true for all of us. But ABA can help with that. Remember, skill acquisition and decreasing behaviors that get in the way. Okay, and Barbara says that a weighted lap blanket helped her son. We love weighted blankets. Okay. We're going to get back to this, but I've got guests. We have to get to guests here. We have with us, and I said our topic today was going to be facing some of the hard stuff, right? But we're going to give you a big treat and reward at the end, so don't get nervous. But David Turk is here, and he is a special needs planning expert. He is coming to us from Serenitas Special Needs Planning, and David, we're so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I do want to point out for everybody watching that David is not an attorney, and so this is not to be misconstrued as any kind of advice. But you are a special needs planning expert, and a lot of us avoid that, David.
Very true.
We really do. We like run the other way. I shared with you the other day, and I shared with them this morning that my plan for the future is simply to live forever. And I know a lot of parents that subscribe to this, sure. And we laugh about it, but it's not really that funny. This is some serious business. So we got a lot of things that we're going to talk about, but first, let's face the hard stuff. So there's a group of things that we need to do to plan for the future. Wills, I don't even know what else. Tell us a little bit about what we need to be doing.
Well, fantastic. So thank you again for having me here today.
Thrilled to have you.
Let me back up and just give you an overview of special needs planning, because many families, they hear planning and all they think about is legal. And while crucially important, there are a number of other elements that go into it. So On the legal component, it's important to understand all of the different types of documents, and there are a number of them that all work together. There's a will, there's a family trust, and there are different types of special needs trusts that address different situations, and it's important to understand what's appropriate for you.
Okay. If you have a will, do you need a trust as well?
You do.
Okay.
Well, with the goal in mind is to be able to maintain government benefits and still have assets that can provide for a better quality of life.
Okay.
To do that, you would need a special needs trust, which specifically addresses that component, which allows assets to be in this type of trust, protected for the individual, and still be able to maintain government benefits, specifically SSI and the Medicaid program, Medi-Cal, here in California.
Okay, so not just enough to have the will that says all of my money goes to this person, you've got to have the facility for where the money goes, otherwise it could end up tanking all of their governmental funding.
Correct.
Basically? Okay.
Exactly, because Social Security has a stipulation that one cannot have over $2,000 of assets in their name.
Yeah.
If a will passed everything to the individual, those assets would be theirs. They would be not only be ineligible for SSI benefits, but Medi-Cal or Medicaid could come back and ask for payment for past services rendered.
Okay, we don't want that.
So planning, there are a lot of nuances to it,
Okay.
but it doesn't have to be so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things philosophically I want to share with families is that the goal and the gift of planning is providing everyone involved with some peace of mind.
And you know, it occurs to me that a lot of us, I'm just going to call on myself, we're control freaks, right? And I don't want to ever die because I want to control it. But if I could tap into the control freak in me that and just for a second face that I'm not going to live forever, then I would want to do this because I want to be able to call the shots even after I'm dead.
That's exactly right.
And we can. So if we do this. So when we would meet with somebody like you,
Correct.
Who's a special needs planning expert, and I want to make sure that we give out your information so that if people want to contact you and your business, but what kinds of things are we, like, how long is it going to take? What are we actually looking at logistically?
Logistically, it can take as little as 2 to 3 weeks to do.
Okay.
It's a matter of how diligent one is about putting the thought into it and how much thought you want to put into it.
Is it just thought, or do I have to have the paperwork in line too?
Well, the thought is the hardest part.
Okay.
Really, that's the hardest part, is what do I want for my loved one and my family, and how do I want to structure it?
Okay.
The paperwork, that's fairly easy.
Okay.
That can be done really quite quickly. And we just want to make sure that that your wishes and the control freak in you is satisfied.
Okay. I think a lot of us are afraid to get to the planning phase because we don't feel like there is any money to be left, and we don't want to face that.
That's very true.
Do you find that it's less of a nerve-wracking thing than we think it's going to be?
It is, and I often find that there's often good news when we get together. There are often more funds available through Social Security potentially.
Okay.
And one of the things that we do, in addition to the legal planning, I mentioned there are other aspects to special needs planning, and clearly one of those aspects is understanding the government benefits that we're entitled to today,
Yes.
as well as in the future, and they're different.
Yes.
And that's part of the planning process, is what can we expect coming in, how do we maximize what is available to us, and how do we protect it?
Okay. So let's move over then to talk a little bit about this government funding thing, because I think that a lot of us are completely unaware of what is available. So talking about, you're a special needs planning expert, talk to us a little bit about how we find out what's available and what's actually there, because it's surprising, isn't it?
It is surprising, and it varies greatly by region. We are very, very lucky in California to have the resources that we do. The regional center system is looked at very, very highly nationwide as being a wonderful way to distribute services. But not all states are the same. On one side, you have what am I eligible for through Social Security? And a lot of times, there's money being left on the table. Families will often accept the first answer that Social Security provides and not push back at all. And that can often be the difference between a partial payment, a 2/3 payment, or a full payment. And we're talking Social Security can add up to over $1 million of cash benefits between the ages of 18 and 80.
Wow.
And that's before you even count the health care benefits of the Medicaid system and Medicare.
Okay, so, it's so funny to me because there are some things in life that we're just so accepting that we need to go to an expert. Like I don't know anybody anymore that goes, oh, I'm going to do my own brakes on my car. Nobody does that. You take it to the brake expert because they know exactly what to do. It's quicker, it's faster. You get it done right because it's too important to mess with yourself. And yet when it comes to this, we just a lot of times don't allow ourselves, okay, I'm going to take a couple of minutes, sit down with an expert, let them walk me through and know what it is. I imagine there's a lot of people that are walking away from money on the table.
There are.
And I'd mentioned before that there are so many of our families that have written in and said that they have adult children that are living with them, and the kids are showing that they'd like to have a job because it's what their friends do or their brothers and sisters do, and parents are afraid to allow their kids to work because if they make a certain amount of money, all of their other funding will go away. And what happens if they die and they don't have that funding and the job goes away? So you have some advice for us about, that you've got some tips and tricks that you can help people to understand how this actually works and how it can work to their benefit. So let's talk a little bit for a second about how do people get a hold of you?
Sure. You can get a hold of me at my website, which is Serenitas SNP. It's SERENITAS SNP.com. Stands for Special Needs Planning.
Fabulous.
Serenitas means peace of mind or peace in...
Which is why I was pronouncing it wrong, because I don't have that.
Well, we're in Los Angeles, and of course it would be Serenitas, but it opens up a conversation.
There we go. So I want to, and can you, are you able to talk with people who live in different states?
I am. We can have a conversation and identify locally what might be available to them. We do work nationwide. Consultations are complimentary, and that one of the reasons we do that is we know how reluctant families are to get the information.
Yeah.
It is, I want to eliminate as many barriers as possible and be able to make sure the families have the information they need. It can be so beneficial to them.
Yes.
Another great resource, which I will provide on the website, when families meet with us, we provide a complimentary copy of our new book that's come out called The Beginner's Guide to Special Needs Planning.
Okay.
All the things you didn't know you needed to know.
Right.
And it is a wonderful, comprehensive piece that addresses all of the things we won't be able to get into today.
Right, because and I hate to be a tease about this, but it's so individual.
It is.
And there is so much to this. But I think what's important is that it's that facing the hard stuff. We have to face that this is an aspect of being a member of the autism community.
It is.
That there is some planning that has to be done, and it will save you so much time, heartache, and energy and money to work with an expert. And you're a great expert to work with, and how wonderful to have the book in addition. And that it isn't just SSI though. No. There are other federal programs and governmental programs that are funding sources. And rather than have to go search that up and find that yourself, how much faster and easier is it to work with somebody like yourself?
Absolutely.
An amazing thing. What haven't we covered? What haven't we touched on?
There are a number of things, so we'll briefly go through it, but you touched on, you had mentioned families not wanting their child to work because it might impact their benefits.
Right.
And While some of that is true, and it's important to understand how it actually operates, generally we want our children to work.
Yes.
We want them to have that independence.
Yes.
And Social Security really does work out to a net benefit by working. The numbers do work out that way. With that said, however, it can impact Social Security, and there's a new government program that was passed into law in 2014 called the ABLE Act of 2014. Yes. Very briefly, it's now a savings account that is tax deferred that allows a person living with special needs to be able to save funds up to $100,000 without it impacting their eligibility for government benefits.
And that's an incredible thing, and people need to be taking advantage of this taking advantage of it right now while it exists. We don't know how long, things could change.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who are like, what? I didn't know about that. That's just a soupçon of what there is that we don't know, and that's why you get the experts.
Exactly.
Remarkable. And so again, let's give your information again for people to contact you.
David Turk at Serenitas Special Needs Planning. 818-231-6759. You can email me at david@serenitas.snp. That's SERENITAS.SNP.com.
Okay, and somebody has written in, a person who identified themselves as being on the spectrum themselves, wanting to know if she's a stay-at-home mom taking care of kids, if there's any funding for us, because she put her career on hold to stay at home and take care of the kids.
Sure, wonderful question. There are, I'm assuming that we're in California.
I would assume not, but
not, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There may be in-home support services available to you as mom. That's IHSS is the acronym for that. That might be available. Depending on a diagnosis that your children have, there is possibly, and also income levels address some of this as well. There may be some Social Security benefits, and as well as Medicaid.
Okay. And especially I'm not sure if it was the mom who had said that they are also on the spectrum. I have to go back and look at that. Because there might be benefits for you as
Certainly.
well, because if you are considered disabled, it's different than if you're staying home to take care of your children because they're disabled. And you might all be disabled, but there is a consideration there to be made. But great way. And so when people call you, just to get an idea, I think you said there's a consultation.
Yeah. And typically, take anywhere from half hour to an hour to talk about your specific questions and your situation. Everyone is different, and the details matter.
Okay. And then is there a charge for the consultation?
There's no charge for that.
That's an amazing thing, you guys. What a wonderful
Please
opportunity.
use me as a resource.
And then within that consultation, I would imagine you let us know what the cost will be moving forward so that everyth's out there and you'll know exactly what it is, the cost of everything.
Everything is up front. And one of the reasons families like working with us as well is it's very transparent. There's not an hourly fee. It is what it is. So and it's also a relationship. It's not a transaction where we're done with this and we never see each other again.
Okay.
Things change over time.
Sure.
There are questions that you're going to have that come up, and I'm always available to work with you on that.
Well, we love, this. You've made this all a lot easier. I hope that some of you will reach out to David and start the process of facing the hard stuff. It's on my 2018 that I have to do this. And David, just so you know, has come to us extremely well recommended, because I found David through the fabulous Joanne Lara at Autism Works Now. So there is no higher recommendation. So what a wonderful, wonderful thing that you're doing. Again, one more time, the information.
David at serenitas.snp.com, SERENITAS SNP.com.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and
Thank you
talk
so
with us
much
today.
for having me.
All right, we're running a little bit late, so I apologize that we've kept Bonnie Yates waiting. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with some more hard stuff. Special needs attorney Bonnie Yates, but we'll promise we've got that reinforcer coming at the end. You're not going to want to miss it, Brett Myler. Get out the tissues. We're all going to have a happy boo-hoo, okay? But first, this, and then Bonnie Yates. Stick with us.
I am Alexis Weinman at the Future Horizons Super Conference in Dallas, Texas. It helped me in a way because it was a format that I was not used to. Like, I had never curled my hair before. I've never worn heels. I didn't know what foundation was. And it was just, it was a very, like, it helped me more in a business sense. Like, I know how to present myself in front of people now. That's something my mom drilled into my head. I have trouble sometimes with it. Like, you introduced yourself to me downstairs, and so I immediately, like, and I've heard of you before, so I was like, I know this person, I can make eye contact with this person. And if I'm talking to someone I don't know, or if I'm listening to someone give a speech, most of the time my head will be down. I don't look at people in the eye, but if it's someone I know I need to make eye contact with, I make eye contact. But my mom growing up, she, especially after the diagnosis, she would always like grab my hand if I was like, you know, looking everywhere else but her, and she'd like say, look me in the eye. And so she wouldn't let go of my hand until I looked her in the eye. I do feel like I have to do play poet because, you know, sometimes there'll be jokes I don't understand, but I'll laugh at anyway. There will be situations that I'm not comfortable with, but I'm going to have to play along anyway. And I think I just found out, like, I'm just a tremendously amazing liar. Like, I can pretend like I'm uncomfortable with something when in actuality I am screaming inside, or I know the moment I get back to my dorm room, I'm going to start screaming, or having a meltdown or something like that. But I also know that there is a time and a place because there isn't any safe rooms available in neurotypical society. Like, we have to make our own. And, you know, on a college campus, there's not many places you can go and scream without attracting attention. The way I explain it to people is, you know, people's brains are like hamster wheels. Eventually, the hamster's got to take a break. Autistic brains aren't like that. They just keep going and going and going. So we can't stop thinking about things. There's, like, that's why a lot of kids with autism have sleep problems, because they can't fall asleep because they have too much on their brain. They can't sleep because they're thinking too much. And I think just the walking in circles, there's no thought to a circle. Like, it's just, like, so I'll just plug in my earphones so I can't hear anything else except whatever white noise I'm listening to, and I'll just walk in a circle. I think it's just like we are just as prevalent as men with autism. There might not be as many as there are boys, but we are still part of this movement. We're still part of this community, and we just got to remind people that, hey, you know, we're here too. You know, don't forget about us. One thing I've learned is that, first off, I'm not the only person who is speaking from their own perspective. Like, I feel like I go to some of these conferences and it's a bunch of doctors and a bunch of parents who want to talk and get to know what autism is about, but there's not a lot of people on the spectrum talking about it. And so I come to these and I see Temple Grandin, who's one of the biggest faces in the autism community, actually get up and talk about what helped her and what we need to do in order to get our kids out of society and not in our parents' basements. And so it's just kind of reaffirming, like, I'm not the only one. Thank you. Because I'd go to these and I would be the only one. I'd be next to a bunch of doctors and talking about words I have not even seen before, let alone pronounce. And I'm just sitting here like, I did a pageant once. So it's good to know, like, I'm speaking from a perspective of not necessarily overcoming, but learning to live with this, because I feel like not a lot of people come out and say what it's like to live on the autism spectrum. A lot of people talk about the struggles and everything like that, but they don't talk about, you know, what they've done to make their lives better while living on the spectrum.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the ABCs and XYZs of Special Needs Conference. And this year, for the first time, they've got something really remarkable. It's the Entrepreneurial Boutique. These are all items that have been made and are being sold by individuals who have special needs. So we're going to do a little shopping and talk to some of these fabulous entrepreneurs. Come on.
My name is Molly Rarick, and I'm founder of Breed's Gift. We're a nonprofit that serves teens and adults with special needs, like Chase here. We were founded in 2013 and serve people in the Conejo Valley, Santa Barbara, and LA.
Our main objective is to give our participants the skills they need to gain a more independent life.
My name is Shelley Cox, and Lisa Zalagi and I are founders of Creative Steps and Create Micro Business Enterprises. And the items that we're selling here today are all made by the clients who have passions about what they want to make, and then they get the profits from what they make after we've paid all of the other expenses.
We are here today because my goal is to be independent, and also I would like to share all my artwork, and I would like to sell.
Thinking about at his young age being a businessman, it's amazing. I cannot be more proud.
Welcome back. I want to say really quickly, because we've got Bonnie Yates and we've been making her wait, and I hate that because her time is so valuable. But I do want to say to the mom who has written in saying that your son has been hitting you, we are going to get to your comment, so stick around. But first up, we have the fabulous, the wonderful Bonnie Yates. She's special education attorney with Hirji and Chow, and we're welcoming you back to the show. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Bonnie.
Thank you. It feels as if it's been a long, long time.
It has been a long, long time. It's been a very long time. But we're thrilled to have you back. I want to talk briefly about Hirji and Chow, and if you'll give some information about this wonderful law firm. Are you able to hear me?
Well, we're hunkered down in Culver City at Hirji and Chow. You can reach us at 310-391-0330, and we do special education and disability discrimination, among other things, and we will always offer anybody who needs a consultation, a free consultation. So I think that's enough about Hirji and Chow, but I also have to say that we're answering questions, subject to California law, because that's where I'm licensed, licensed to practice in the state of California. We also answer questions from other jurisdictions under federal law, but they're general answers. If you have a specific problem, we direct you to COPA, COPAA.net, where you can find an attorney in your state that is a competent special education practitioner.
Fabulous. And so when last we spoke, I don't know where we left off. What were we going to talk about today, Bonnie?
Yeah, well, what we're going to talk about today is how you can be a due process detective and help yourself or help your attorney in the event that you need to go to due process.
Okay, good information.
We've talked a little bit about due process, and I don't want to alarm your readers, your listeners, not your readers, and maybe just because I'm, old and cranky, but more and more it just is seeming like a waste to me to try to do anything at the school level, because there's so much pushback and the districts don't take it seriously until you file for due process. And then once you file for due process, they have to bring their attorney in, pay their attorney, and they're subject to hearing dates that can come up pretty quickly, like 45 days, and then you get their attention. So I want you all to think about being your own due process detective and collecting your issues and keeping your eye on the big picture in the event that you can't resolve things at the IP level. If you can, that's great, but I'm just tired of having to push the rock so hard at the IP team and have them hide behind things like, oh, it's not about cost, it's about blah, blah, blah. oh, it's not about cost. It's always about cost, guys. That's what you have to understand.
Yeah.
And they're always weighing the relative costs of things. And when you all of a sudden have them in a situation where there's a litigation pending, you have a different kind of leverage. So there's no rule that you have to have an attorney file for due process for you. IDEA was actually set up so that parents could do their own due process. It's supposed to be informal and simple, and we know that it isn't, but that's an option for people if they can't enter into a relationship with an attorney that works for them or works for the attorney. So we're thinking about you going to your IEP meeting about what the rules actually are, and then you can just make notes to yourself. You're collecting issues in the event that you ever do need to go to alternative dispute resolution, or you do need to go to due process. In California, you have 2 years from the date of any of these significant events, whether it's an inappropriate assessment, an IEP team meeting, not for FAPE, or whatever it is, but you have to bring any lawsuit within 2 years of that date. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, is you have some time. It's not like our regional center in California where we deal with 10-day statutes of limitations, 30-day statutes of limitations, 90-day statutes of limitations. Anyway.
Can I interject too, Bonnie, and say that I think that what you're talking about being a due process detective, there's part of it, there's so much anxiety that comes around being at an IEP meeting. And if we have specific tasks to do, first of all, I think that mitigates the anxiety. And second of all, I think it's a good practice to really keep your ducks in a row at the IEP, because I think that reads to the IEP team. I think, to your point, I have seen lately that schools have been a lot more gutsy about pushing and saying, no, we're not going to do something. They're playing chicken, I think, with parents to see who is going to go to due process. And when they see that you have your ducks in a row and that you're keeping track of things, I think they're less likely to play chicken with you. I think you're more likely to be able to solve your issue without due process by doing this work that you're talking about. And the payoff is that not only that, but if they do play chicken with you and you do have to go to process, clearly you're more likely to prevail if you have these ducks in a row. Do you agree?
I would agree with all of that. I would absolutely agree with all of that. And I think that the anxiety is a healthy human response. If you drop me in the middle of a desert island and I don't know what the rules are, I'm going to be pretty anxious and try to figure them out fast. So parents they sense that they're in an environment that's a potentially unfriendly environment. They don't know the rules. So some of the thinking behind this is, when you're your own detective and you know how to look for the issues, you're going to be more empowered because you'll know the rules.
Yeah.
So we're just going to go straight through and talk about some of these, and then either this week or next week, depending on where our time goes, we're going to talk about the state guidelines on dyslexia, the California state guidelines. Why are we going to talk about those? Because a lot of the problems in dyslexia and how people with dyslexia learn how to read are the same problems that people with autism have when learning how to read. And, we need to arrive at an understanding of what an appropriate method of teaching reading is to people that have language learning disabilities. So that we may not get to today, but that's coming down the pipeline.
Love it.
Anyway, so as far as what you're going to look for when you're a due process detective, starting with the assessment plan, if you provide the district with a written request to assess, the district has to respond to that, and they either need to send you a letter telling you that they're not going to assess and why, or they need to send you an assessment plan. And if they send you an assessment plan, it has to be, developed within 15 days of your request, okay? So there's a few things about assessment plans that bear upon due process in the IEP meeting. One is the typical way you get the assessment plan is they send it home in your kid's backpack. So you find this thing, it's like a piece of paper, it's got a date on it, and you're like, gee, this is a really professional way to send information back and forth. And you look at it, and it says they want to assess your son or daughter, and it outlines in the most general way, only general, the testing areas. So it'll say academic, cognitive, behavioral, motor, planning, etc. it won't tell you any of the assessments that are done. And the law doesn't require them to commit in advance, but the law also says that the assessment plan is supposed to be developed at the IEP meeting with parental input. So clearly this assessment plan that appears in the backpack doesn't. And so what you're looking for with the assessment plan is, first of all, did they generate it within 15 days? And second of all, was more input from you needed? Because you might tell them that you thought that they needed to do a particular type of assessment and why, and then they'd need to respond to you. So does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And I'm taking notes because I've got this coming up.
Okay, well then when you get your assessment plan, Shannon, you have 15 days to return it.
Okay.
You have to, 15 days to consent. And the school districts are getting more careful about this because LAUSD got dinged last year on an assessment issue. And so, if parents aren't signing assessment plans timely, you might anticipate a letter that said, we sent this on this date, this is what we offered to do, we haven't heard from you, blah. They're trying to make it clear to the state when the state comes in and audits that they're doing their part to ensure IDEA compliance.
It's a little bit rough, though. It's exactly what you described, though, that they send it home in your kid's backpack. And if you don't go through your kid's backpack every day, which I used to, I don't at 14 anymore, I could easily miss something. Is there anything that we can do about the fact that, that's not an effective mode of communication, sending home a letter with a kid who's on the autism spectrum?
Well, you could send them something. You could send them something in writing that says, my son has a disability. He doesn't always have good control over his organization and materials. I want you to send any and all correspondence to me via email with, attachments as pertinent, and that should solve the problem because they have, it's easy for them to send it in an email with your parent rights attached or procedural safeguards in the assessment plan.
Okay. I've noted that. All right, thank you.
Okay. So once they look at what they confront and they decide that they're going to make the child eligible for special education, they have to do this assessment and hold an IEP meeting and offer FAPE within 60 days of the parental consent assessment. So sometimes we get weird situations where the parent signs the assessment plan, but they don't date it. That would be a bad thing because if later you're coming back and one of the things that you uncover as your, one of your search items when you're a due process detective is that they waited 90 or 120 days to do the IEP meeting, that's a violation. So you need a date on the assessment plan to show when it is that you made your initial request for assessment.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
That makes total sense, and I didn't know that at all. So that's great info.
Next issue, thank you. Next issue is assessment. Now, normally districts don't want to assess and they want to push it off to triennial evaluation, and then they want to try to convince the parent at the try that the parent doesn't even need to do an evaluation. That's been a recent trend. They changed the law so the 3-year isn't mandatory. But there are some situations in which actually the opposite thing happens, which is the district wants a reevaluation because they're generally searching for some, evidence that will bolster the result that they want to arrive at. Now, I know that's very cynical, but, you ask for a one-to-one aid, you're going to get an assessment. You ask for ABA, or an increase in ABA or whatever it is, you're going to get an assessment. So the question is, how frequently can they compel you to submit to an assessment? And the rule is not more than once a year and not less often than every 3 years. So if the district wants to assess and it's within the year, we'll look at it and say sometimes well, they don't have any right to do this, but if we don't do this, it's going to look bad to the hearing officer. It's going to look as if we were blocking their collecting of information in response to problems that we've been reporting. So we may recommend that you do the assessment anyway, but just know that they can't do it more than once a year.
See, my experience of it is the exact opposite, that the school always wants to assess, and they want, and I don't want them to. And it's not that I don't want assessments, it's that I have our assessments done at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and I don't want them done by the school because they want to take him out of class, and it takes so much time, and it's not his favorite thing. And if he's already gone through the CARD assessment, he doesn't want to sit there endlessly and do assessments. So
the district's allowed to do its own assessments.
Yes.
Whether you have a CARD assessment done personally by Dr. Grandpachet or not. But also, if they've assessed in less than a year's time, if it's been less than a year, the law says that they can, that they can't assess more frequently than once a year, and that's Education Code 56043K. So you can check it out if you want. That's the provision that deals with reassessment.
Okay.
Okay, so are we good on that?
Yeah, we're
move on
good.
to the next thing. Okay, so parent requests an IEP. District has to hold an IEP within 30 days of the request. Now, there's no requirement that you put your request for that meeting in writing, but if you don't, my guess is you're not going to get too much action on your request. So it needs to be in writing.
Is there an asterisk with that though, Bonnie? Because it seems like when parents want to have an IEP meeting, it's usually the end of the year or the beginning of the year, and schools always say, oh, we don't do that at the beginning of the year. We don't do that at the end of the year. We're about to go on summer break.
Okay, so yeah, this is the way it works. They have to do it within 30 days unless there's a vacation in excess of 5 days, in which case the vacation in excess of 5 days counts in terms of the time period. So like if you are 30 days before school lets out, well, that's a bad example. If you're 5 days before school lets out, you can't get an IEP till the first 30 days of the following September. If you ask for an IEP meeting 65 days before school lets out, you'll definitely get an IEP meeting within 30 days, unless they're behaving extra legally. What gets funky is when it gets too close to the end of the year, if assessments are required, etc., they're not going to be able to get ready in time, and they're not required to. So Shannon, you're right about that, but it's not quite as permissive as you were making it sound.
Okay.
Like if you show up in September and you decide your son needs an assessment, if you ask them on September 5th, they have to have the meeting in place by like October 4th or something.
Okay.
So where it gets messed up for people is holiday, winter break, spring break, and summer mess with the timelines. But normally people will say, this is a really bad situation. I need an emergency IEP. There's no such thing as an emergency IEP. They have, still 30 days to set up that meeting. But it occurs to me that what I want to say is that the real way to have a 30-day IEP is to file for, or an emergency IEP, is to file for due process. Because that's not they don't have control over the timelines there. It's much harder for them to stall.
Okay.
So that's a simpler situation. Now, if you transfer in the middle of the school year to another district, there are some things that the district needs to do in response to that. One is they need to get all your records and quickly, and try to get up to speed on who the student is and what his needs are. And sometimes, believe it or not, they don't do that very quickly. But the other thing is when they have the IEP meeting, what are they supposed to do? They can't implement the old IEP that has services in another state or something like that. What they're supposed to do is they're supposed to, quote unquote, approximate as closely as possible what you were receiving. So let's say you have speech therapy through a non-public agency at a frequency of 30 minutes individual per week. They don't have to use your old speech provider, but they need to find somebody that can deliver the same or similar service. Now, when it gets more interesting is at the end of the school year, because if you move after school is out in the spring, but before the fall, they are required to have an IEP in place by the first day of school. And districts don't know this, and they mess up all the time, and it's a great advantageous violation for parents. It's a significant violation. What they have to do is they have to take all the existing information they have, the prior assessments, the prior IEPs, parental input, any private assessments the parent has, and they can do an assessment over the summer if they want to. They just never want to because their personnel doesn't want to come in. But they have to do whatever is necessary in order for there to be an IEP in place by the first day of school. And people don't know that. And people end up in log jams where they're at the new school and nobody knows who they are, what their needs are, or when their IEP should be, or whatever the issue is. So that's the distinction between transferring, what we call mid-year versus at the end of the school year. Those rules are complicated, and people have specific questions about them. We'll be happy to answer them offline. But generally, it gets more complicated, particularly if you're coming from outside of the state or outside of the SELPA. So we talked a little bit about how the district is supposed to get your records if you're coming from another district. Well, similarly, if you request to see your child's educational records, they have to make them available to you within 5 business days. And we could do a fascinating forensic project. We're not going to do it because we don't have time. But we could take a highly organized parent, like CS's mom. CS's mom had every communication she'd ever had with the district in a notebook. And she was highly organized, and she had the whole chronology in her head. When we got CS's file, most of the communications that she had with the district about significant problems that were in the form of email were not there. So if the district failed to preserve educational records because they thought email doesn't count, that's another violation. Definitely something. I think that this happens in many, many cases, and the attorney doesn't know because maybe the parent doesn't know, doesn't tell us. Yeah. But those email exchanges that you're having with the district are really crucial in ways that you don't always appreciate at the time. So if your instinct is to document something because it's making you uncomfortable, you probably should go with your instinct, especially now that you're a due process detective and you're really thinking about, the bigger picture in terms of appeal and stuff like that. What about if you have a complaint about records not being provided or IEP not being held in a timely fashion? You certainly could file for due process on those issues, but there's also a state complaint process where you write the California Department of Education, and they have 60 days from the receipt of your written complaint to investigate and issue a response. So that's an avenue that I don't think is as effective as due process, because a lot of the time when I deal with CDE, I feel like they're bending over backwards to tell me that everything is fine. But on things like a records violation where it's so clear cut, they can investigate. They will make a finding that the district is out of compliance. District doesn't like that. So be aware that CDE can handle a lot of, California Department of Ed can handle a lot of enforcement issues. So we talked about the 2-year statute of limitations in California. We're not going to talk about that more. People can send in questions if they have them. But if you request a due process hearing, whether it's through your attorney or you're going to do it by yourself, they have to schedule your hearing within 45 days of receipt of your written complaint for due process, unless you agree to waive time. So you would find very quickly, if you filed for due process, that all of a sudden, rather than things moving as slow as molasses, things would start moving along at a pretty significant clip, and you'd be offered a resolution session, you'd be offered a mediation date, and then you'd be offered a hearing. And in theory, all that can happen within 45 days. So that's the timeline on hearings. If you have a student in a residential placement, that's the most restrictive placement there is on the continuum of options. And the law requires a more frequent review, which is a good idea. The team has to meet every 6 months rather than annually to look at whether this is still the least restrictive environment for the student. So one exception, to the rule that IEPs are normally developed and held annually is the exception for residential placement. Question, Shannon, or shall I go on?
No, we did have a question that came in, but I'm going to wait till the end when you're done because I want to keep you on this train of thought.
Well, I'm on this train of thought, and I might not be done for a while because there's a lot more.
Should we hold that stuff for next week?
Is the question pertinent to the topic that we're talking
Well, I'll tell you what it is, and you tell me if you think it's pertinent. Should a new diagnosis of ADHD be added to the current IEP for autism? I have requested a new IEP meeting, and it's not giving me the rest of it, but I think it's for a first grader.
I think I can answer that. I mean, ADHD isn't an eligibility category under IDEA unless it is so pervasive that it is highly distracting and exhausting during the school day. That's not exactly the standard. That's sort of a lay spin on the standard. So you have to show that your child has ADHD and also that it causes him to have diminished alertness and vitality. That's the language, believe it or not, during the school day. But when you get a new diagnosis, I'd say in general, if you don't share that with the district, there may be a problem down the line where the district accuses you of hiding information and says, how could we possibly have addressed his needs if you didn't share that with us? So the time that I think that it's hardest to disclose an eligibility, I'd say would be if somebody has assessed the child and decided that the child has intellectual disability. The reason, I'm not saying it shouldn't be disclosed, I think you have to disclose all this stuff, but we already know it's been studied that teachers lower their expectations if you've got a child that is denoted as intellectually disabled rather than, let's say, borderline, low average, etc. But yeah, I think you have to disclose because you're always playing to two audiences. You're playing to the school district, but you're also playing to a possible hearing officer. And hearing officers do not like obstruction on the part of parents.
Okay,
so
the child already has the IEP for autism, so adding the ADHD, you want to disclose it, and I would think you would, it's going to change some of the way in which you teach the child, because that's, So does she actually have to call an IEP meeting to disclose the ADHD, or can she just send a thing in writing and saying, for our next IEP, we want to address this?
Well, the law changed, and now you don't have to always meet in person to have an IEP. You have to do it for the annual. But if you have an issue that you want to add to the IEP or discuss, you can do it by an amendment without a meeting.
Okay.
So she could write them a letter and say, I'm proposing that you add an amendment to the most recent IEP to discuss the implications of my son's recent ADHD diagnosis. I feel that his ADHD, has an impact on his educational performance because X, Y, and Z. I think he needs the additional, following accommodations added to his IEP to address, his off-task behavior, whatever it is. And you don't have to do it in person. You can do it by amendment and waive the in-person meeting.
And she
but
says,
I think if the
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, she says, I'm hoping to get more help for him in class with ADHD. And of course, that would be the reason why to disclose it, is to hope for that. We often see that classrooms don't yet know, because the training hasn't been there for teachers. So I want to encourage that parent to stay on it, and we'll try to give you some resources to give the teachers so that they can effectively address the ADHD. So that's what I wanted to say about that.
Exactly.
So what were you saying?
It might be hard. Hold on one second. Is that background noise audible to you?
Not to me. Not to me.
That's all I need. Okay. So I would think, though, if she's concerned about having this have a meaningful impact on the classroom, then I think that she probably does need a face-to-face meeting with these people.
Okay.
And presumably it's got a report that substantiates the ADHD. I think that would have to be submitted, and without it, I don't think, you're going to get anywhere. If you just go in and say, my kid has ADHD, well, great, so does my dog, whatever.
Right,
anyway.
that is the way it's looked at. We are almost out of time, Bonnie. So how do you want to, what do you want to talk about to leave this, and then how do you want to leave it for next week?
Well, I think next week we're going to continue on through before we get to the dyslexia guidelines.
Okay.
If anybody has questions that have been generated by some of the examples that we gave you, that would be good. Next week we'll start off with parent and student rights. And I think when we do that, we'll get to the issue of prior written notice, which is something that parents don't know too much about, districts aren't compliant with, but it's actually very important because, as we've discussed before, if you ask a district to add ADHD, let's say, to my IEP, and the district refuses to do it, they have to send you within a reasonable time what's called prior written notice, telling you why they refuse and the bases for the refusal. So if you go to an IEP meeting and you ask for something and they sweep it under the rug, you should follow up with a letter that asks them to give you prior written notice about why they won't offer clinical occupational therapy services, for example.
And
so
I
we'll
just-
talk more about those next week.
I just want to be clear for people watching, you know, our topic this week is facing the hard stuff. And this is some of the hard stuff because, you know, I didn't become a lawyer, Bonnie, for very specific reasons. You know what I mean? And then suddenly I had a child with autism and I needed to, you know, start thinking like a lawyer and start keeping things together like a lawyer. And sometimes, you know, we're like, do I really have to do this too? But the truth of the matter is that you've said this before on the show, and I've seen this. The schools don't know what the rules are, and they break the rules all the time. I think sometimes unknowingly and sometimes willfully they break the rules. And when we know these bits of information that Bonnie gives us, it empowers us. And it is the difference often. I can speak to that personally. When the school messes up and you see that and you know that they've messed up and you know how they've messed up, it makes a difference in your child getting the things that you're asking for that are appropriate. It just
Knowledge
does.
is power, right? Knowledge is power.
It is.
You know, I mean, the best, most successful attorneys are unfortunately the most feared attorneys. And if you're feared, then you can have a lot of fun going in and be very nice to them. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, until it becomes necessary for them to have the behavioral correction again. But, you know,
I love that.
But I am not effective if I don't know the rules.
Right.
I have a strong personality, but I can't just be a blowhard, you know.
Right.
I have to know what the law is. Same goes for you guys. You're all smart. You wouldn't be watching this program if you weren't. So I give this to you with the utmost confidence in your abilities to use it to make you more effective than you already are, because you guys are pretty awesome.
Well, I love you, Bonnie. You know that, and you've made such a tremendous difference in our lives. So I thank you. And again, and again, tell them how they can get a hold of Hirji and Chow if they want to talk to you or somebody else in the office.
Our phone number is 310-391-0330. That's the best way to contact us.
We adore you, Bonnie. So we'll have you back next week, and we'll begin. We'll move the conversation further. And if people want to write in questions specifically for Bonnie, send them in early, because I do when I'm being my best self, which I've not been lately. I send her the questions usually at the beginning of the week. So send your questions in early. All right.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back, and we've got a special guest, Swathi, and I'm not going to murder her last name. I'm going to let her say it for you. She is the mom behind Designs by Siri. So stick with us. She's got a new radio show that's coming up that she's going to tell us about. So stick with us. And don't forget, for the mom who wrote it and said that your child is hitting you, we are going to talk about that. And we are going to get to Brett Myler and some more of your questions if we have to stay later. So stick with us. We're very excited because we're in the Noah's Ark exhibit, and we're here with Jason Porter. Thank you for taking us on this tour.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So you're going to show me around a little bit and show me some of the secrets of the Noah's Ark exhibit, right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Cool, let's go.
Yeah.
So Jason, tell us, this is an amazing space. Why is it so incredible for children?
One of the values of the Skirball Cultural Center is taking care of the earth and one another, and so this idea of repurposing materials that would otherwise be tossed off was a big component to how we design the galleries. It's based on, certainly the story that everyone knows is the one from the Hebrew Bible, the story of Noah. But in our research, we looked at over 200 flood stories from around the world, and many different cultures have flood stories that have similarities, and the similarities that we identified were these 3 chapters: the storm, some crazy challenge that comes to your life; an ark, a kind of means of survival, a way for a community to come together to survive; and finally the rainbow, which is this kind of symbol of hope, the second chance to make the world anew.
Love it. All right, let's take a look through, and we're going to talk about some of the learning opportunities that are available here.
We really wanted people to kind of discover what they were supposed to do. For example, this elephant has a gong in the center, and there's a little wheel here that you can turn and see what happens. But there's also some hidden things, like there's a little peephole in this polar bear, so it's kind of a moment where you could talk with your kids about what does it mean that that polar bear in there only has a small piece of ice to live on it, and you could talk about kind of the environmental issues that might be associated with it.
All right, should we go downstairs?
Yeah, let's check out the storm.
So Jason, what do you call this room?
This is called the Storm Gallery. In one side of the gallery, we have a storm wall, which is all sorts of sounds and sight effects to make the storm come to life. But we have this, what we call the load up. It's fairly intuitive. You put animals onto the conveyor belt and you turn the wheel and they get loaded up onto the ark. Except you can't do both at the same time by yourself. It's kind of layered in the doing, the learning that we're really interested in, which is about this notion of working together in order to accomplish something. So, when you first get on the ark, obviously you enter 2 by 2 as the story goes. And so the animals in this first section of the ark, they're not quite sure where they should be. They're a little bit nervous about who to hang out with. The gallery is really organized so that the animals are still in pairs. So we talk a lot about what are the elements of home that you need to survive. And it's really a nice kind of intro into the whole experience of being in a community, learning to be together with people who may or may not be the same as us. This gallery of Noah's Ark is unique, I think, in terms of the way that it was designed, that it offers a huge variety of experiences in a way that really accommodates people of all stripes and spots. So there are more quiet zones, like we just left in the move-in day, where you can come into this room where you have a lot of large motor things that are happening, including climbing, and we kind of have nicknamed this the arcade. It's kind of the chapter in the story where they're making new families and they're mixing with other animals that they've befriended. Oh, we have to talk about poop.
We can't do a show without talking about poop.
So, the other fact of life on an ark is that everybody poops. So the challenge is to, clean up.
Okay, so we're in the last room, very cool room. What do we call this room?
We call this the Rainbow Gallery. People really get that this is a place of hope. Sometimes there's an art-making project, that it ends in some sort of inspiration, that people feel like they're inspired to take action in the world and make it a better place.
Thank you so much for showing us everything and telling us about all the wonderful things at the Skirball Center. Welcome back. Can I just say how much I love the Skirball Center? And if you get to Los Angeles, you must go. Take your kids, take your relatives. I would say take your dog, but I don't think they allow dogs. But it's really, and the whole Skirball Center is fabulous, but especially the Noah's Ark exhibit. So having said that, we've got a guest who is joining us via Skype, Swathi Chetapalli. Did I say your last name okay?
Yes, you did.
Okay. And Swathi has been on the show with us before. She is the amazing mom that is behind Designs by Siri. Siri is a lovely young woman who makes jewelry that's absolutely stunning and beautiful, and now has a whole business that employs other people that have unique needs. And we love welcoming you back. And you've got some exciting news because you have a radio show that's starting. The name of the radio show, Autism Awareness Radio Show. So, yes. Swathi, what made you decide to make this leap and to host a radio? I'm thrilled for you. I'm so excited. But what made you do this?
When we traveled to India, last time, I think it was in 2017, we went as a family. And what happened was I did make sure that everybody had their visas excepting mine. We had like 4 hours of waiting in the airport, and then at last when my turn came, the person behind the counter, he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, you have a expired visa. You need to get back to your country. We will just put you on the plane, whatever state. It doesn't have to be California. Wherever there is available, we just have to send you back. We cannot keep you here."
Wow.
And here I am with my child who has autism. The travel was only for 7 days. Because next day, same time, we were supposed to be in the flight coming back. And we were in Delhi. That's not our home. Our home is in another city. So our plan was to show the kids Taj Mahal in Delhi, and then go to Hyderabad, visit the family, and then go to Goa. And all this we planned to do in 7 days. And when this guy told me like this, I didn't know what to say. I just started crying, because where do I start? There is no way I can explain to him that I really needed this. So I told him, "I'm sorry, sir, I don't think I can go back because I have a child with autism, and there is no way I can explain it to her that mommy is gone because she doesn't have visa. That will not make any sense to her, because she doesn't understand all that." He said, "Oh, you're giving excuses. No, you have to go back." Then I said, "Can I see your supervisor?" He said, "Oh, it's not going to make any difference, but still, if you insist, yes, you can see." And then when I went and met him, he has an office, older gentleman, and he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "She doesn't understand language, and if I go back, it will start to worry her, because I was there on the flight and I suddenly disappeared." He said, "That's okay, you can explain to her that you have to go because you don't have documents." I said, "All that is very complex to tell her." Then I said, "Maybe I should ask him to come see her. Maybe that way he will know what autism is all about." So I said, yeah, let's go see her what it is. So instead of he coming alone, he brought all his other people, like a lot of people, at least 15 to 20 men, at 4 o'clock in the morning. And there it was my daughter and her brothers and my husband were sitting with the luggage. I said, "Siri, there is somebody here who wants to see you, who wants to say hi to you." So she gets up and she says hi, and she smiles at them. So he says, "She looks normal to me. I don't know what you're talking about." And then it was difficult for me to explain what autism is all about. And Delhi is the capital city of India, and somehow I got through that. But that is when I decided that I have to do something to educate individuals, especially Indians. We don't talk about our problems. It's a big stigma. We don't talk about any of the problems, especially when it comes to children. Autism is such a thing that it's not black and white. And she was smiling at them. And then these people go send some more, and those people come and look at her up and down, and she doesn't know why they are looking at her. And it was so embarrassing for me, and also my sons, who didn't know what was happening, why people are coming and seeing her and going back. So it is that bad, my experience was. So that's when I decided, no matter what, being a mom and taking care of Siri's business, I actually don't have any time. But then I thought I should do this for people that want to go in and out of India. And
what a wonderful thing. But how did it all end? Did you end up having to come back? What I got to know what happened, Swati. I'm on the edge of my seat here.
So this gentleman said, "Oh, okay, I can give you 72 hours to stay in the country, and 72nd hour you have to be back in the airport. You cannot leave the city. You will have to take the flight back. And this is where you can get the visa." And that's another whole different story. So having my child in the taxi outside the office, and it was a big experience that next time I'll make sure that I have the right document. But yeah, we did see everything that we wanted to, and I did get my visa. And nobody knows what autism is all about.
No, I
really
think.
sad.
Well, I love that you're doing this radio show. You know that I started out doing a radio show about autism, and so I know you're going to reach some amazing people in the world. And you know, people will often say to me, well, you know, do I get nervous when somebody else is going to host a show? And I say no, because this takes a bunch of voices, and sometimes you can hear it from one person and not from another. That would be like saying there's only one teacher ever teaching algebra. We need as many teachers and as many hosts as we can get. So I celebrate, and I can't wait to listen to your radio show. Now, you've got a Facebook page where people can go to follow and find out more information, and the Facebook page is the same name as the radio show, Autism Awareness Radio Show. Is it an online radio show where anybody in the world is going to be able to listen to it?
I can make it live, but it's a radio station in San Francisco, 1170 AM.
Okay.
It's an Indian channel.
So are we listening to it though on the computer, or are we listening to it on like a radio, like in our car?
You can listen to it on a regular radio.
Okay.
In the car or anywhere, but I'm going to archive the program so that we won't lose. And I want you to be one of my guests.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me? I'd love to.
Thank you.
And so will it be available on iTunes, or we'll just go to the Facebook page and we'll be able to get them there?
There's an app.
Okay.
But yeah, I can give the details on the page. My first show is going to be next Monday.
Okay.
At 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time on Desi 1170 AM.
Okay.
DSI 1170 AM.
And what's your first show going to be about?
I think I'll just talk about my journey.
Yeah.
Because I haven't talked to anybody yet to come. And I'm I'm very scared. I don't know how I will take the show forward, but my passion is to educate people and also tell the moms that are in the house dealing with these situations that it's okay. You haven't done anything wrong, not with your child. In Indian community, it's very difficult. It's not as easy as it is in US.
Well, I think this is wonderful. I can't think of anybody I'd be more excited to hear that they're doing a radio show. I think you're exactly the right person to do this. I think not only is that going to help the Indian community, but it also, people need to hear from parents of adults.
Yes.
And parents, you have figured out a big component of it, helping her to become an entrepreneur. So I think that this is remarkable. I'm so excited for you. Again, the name of the show is Autism Awareness Radio Show. And also so on Monday you're going to tell the story, but for people who haven't seen you on the show before, where can they see some of Siri's jewelry and purchase it?
She has her own website, which is designsbysiri.com. She has her own YouTube channel. You can actually watch her make the stuff. Same name.
She's so good.
Thank you.
You're so good. That's wonderful. What a great thing.
I do this 24/7, and my passion is to educate people. Just because they're autistic, don't just strike them off.
Well,
they are smart.
You're
very hardworking.
Yes. You're an amazing mom. You're going to be an amazing radio host. And let me just tell you, before my first radio show, I thought I was going to pass out. I was so nervous. And I worried about it so much. And it's a day that I'll never forget. It was such an amazing experience. So you're going to love it. You're absolutely going to love it. So again, for people, I think the best thing to do is to go on Facebook and go to Autism Awareness Radio Show, and that will give you updates and give you the places in which you can view it and listen to it in your area. I love, you know what I loved about the story, because it's so, of the visas, is that it's so much the autism mom experience that you took care of everybody else's visa but your own. This was me this morning. I was packing meals for everyone else. Did breakfast, lunch, or dinner get in a bag for mom? No.
And I am wearing a series. She made this. It's online.
And it's
And she makes these
beautiful.
bracelets. She is going to be on NBC in April. We don't have the dates yet. And last night, another major television approached us to record her show.
Oh,
So you
that's
will be
great.
seeing her more. She has her own Facebook page also, Designs by Siri. And we are very excited. I want to have more people join what Siri is doing.
Yes.
So I'm looking for opportunities where I can go to schools and tell them how I started this with her. It was like 6 months work one-on-one with her. That is when actually I started connecting with her. Previously, we didn't have anything in common. I didn't have anything to do with her, and I would take care of her basic needs, but jewelry is what got us connected. She knew that I can give her something that would make her happy, and that's how, and I started a book on her, and I want to finish it soon and make it public. That way more parents will be encouraged by her. She has an inspirational story.
Well, you're both inspirational, and the jewelry is beautiful. It always has been, and we just showed some beautiful pictures. So excited! Can't wait. Make sure you let us know when you have a date that she's going to be on NBC, because we want to see. Look at, and I love the wine glass rings. She makes beautiful stuff.
These are wine glass rings which are being shipped to Peju wineries.
I love it.
And Corbel Wineries is also selling her wine glass rings, and we are very excited about it.
I'm so
Table
thrilled for you
wine.
guys. Well,
Thank
you're
you.
doing an amazing job, Mom, and I love that you've got the radio show. So everybody make sure that you go to Facebook and like Autism Awareness Radio Show so that you can get updates about when that's happening. Swathi, you're an inspiration. Give our love to Siri and the whole family, and
Thank you so
let's
much.
talk again soon. But
Yes,
good
we will.
luck on Monday.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I need it.
No, you don't. You're going to be wonderful, but have fun. That's really the important thing. Have some fun with it, and
Thank
it'll be spectacular. I can't wait to hear it. All right, you take care.
You too. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
What an inspirational family. Definitely check out Designs by Siri and check out Autism Awareness Radio Show. We're going to take a quick break. You know what we have so many things to do because we didn't get a chance to before the holidays to do the drawing for the fabulous Wallaroo car seat. So we still need to do that. And I want to make sure that we show you Brett Myler. But I'm going to take 1 second here. Somebody said, I enjoy your show and I'm going to check out Designs by Siri and thank you for sharing. And somebody else said, wow, the jewelry is amazing. It really is, you guys. You got to definitely check it out. But I want to address, there was a mom who wrote in about the fact that her child was hitting her. I just want to address this really quickly. It's not letting me see the question anymore, though. It only lets me see like the last 20 questions. But I know what it was that you were saying that you've gone, okay, Samantha's going to read it to me. Okay, so she said experiencing aggression from the son, hitting her back to retaliate, and that it was happening both at home and in public, and that you've been trying ABA and that ABA has not been effective yet. I really want to encourage you, anytime that you're being hit, it's time to get expert help, and you've already got your ABA team working on it, but let them sometimes, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, but for everybody who's watching, sometimes we soft pedal it when we're being hit, because I know I was being hit for a while. And I didn't want other people to think of my child as being violent or a monster or to look at him in a wrong way. And sometimes we get a little upside down on it and feel like, well, I must have messed up and that's why I'm the one that's being hit. Sometimes the first thing that they try with ABA, remember, it's not cookie cutter, right? So sometimes the first thing they try doesn't work, and sometimes you need another set of eyes there to watch you do the intervention to see if there's like a gap somewhere. Not that it's your fault, but something that you can't see. I think there was like a total of 3 years where in the spring, and it only happened in the spring, still don't know what that's about, we would cycle through a period of time in which Jem would hit me. And usually he hit me in the head. And that wasn't just a coincidence. It was because he knew that that rang my bell and it was the most effective at getting me to stop. Anytime we're getting behavior like that, gotta have another set of eyes because they've really quickly got to find the function of the behavior. And sometimes hitting starts out to be one thing, but then the reaction from it makes it a dual thing. For some kids where they feel like they don't have control over things that happen to them, it's powerful. The moment that you hit somebody and everything stops, it's control, right? But there are other things that lead up to that moment where the control happens. So ask if your team has done a functional behavior assessment on the hitting, and then have them go step by step through the behavior intervention plan with you, and then have them watch you implement it. Because if I guarantee you that, you know, it's likely that if it hasn't taken effect yet, there's probably some aspect of it that you may not be able to follow through on or that you might not be aware of. And it's hard to follow through on a BIP when you're being hit. When somebody just is about to hit you or hits you, it's hard to get your bearings and like go, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this and not be doing that. So ask your ABA team for help. If you happen to be with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, ask for a consult with the Assaultive Behavior Management team. They have a whole team that will consult with you and consult with your supervisor because we got to get this under control. It's so debilitating for you. I know being hit is just horrible. And we also don't want for it to go on long enough that he or she thinks, oh, okay, now I'm going to hit so-and-so at school because it's working. So we got to get a gripster on it as soon as possible. Don't feel like you're alone, and be on your ABA team to say, nope, not working, and ask them, go through the BIP with me. Did you do the FBA? And then show me the BIP, which is the Behavior Intervention Plan, and watch me implement it and give me pointers. It's not going to feel good asking for the help. It's not going to feel good having them watch you do it, but that's what's going to be effective. Make sure that there is no gap in what they've given you. Or if they might watch you implement the BIP and say, you're doing it perfectly, here's what we need to add to it, right? But have them get some eyes on you doing it. Okay, so we're going to take a break. Okay, right now we're going to go to, I promised you, your treat. And then when we come back, we're going to give away the Wallaroo. So this video, it makes me go to the boohoo place. This is Bryce Myler. He is in this video, he's 19 years old. He was diagnosed with autism when he was 3, I believe. And his mom was told, he's a big kid. You just need to institutionalize him now and walk away because he's never going to talk. He's never going to be able to have a job. He's never, you know, and he's going to be abusive, so you need to put him away. This was at the 20th anniversary of CARD, and you can see Brett when he was little on the recovered DVD, but this is him speaking in front of a room full of Hollywood elite at a room that would have made my knees shake. And this is him at 19. Take a look.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? My name is Brett Myler, and I recovered from autism when I was 8 years old due to the extraordinary and selfless efforts of Dr. Doreen Grant-Bichet, Kathy Visconde, Evelyn Cumm, and many other amazing therapists. person show gratitude for being taken from the future of institutions and the inability to communicate even basic needs to getting to have a normal, independent life? What do you say to the people that gave up so very much to give you that life? Since I was 8 years old, my parents have always talked about this. If we saw a clearly autistic person now in public, it was always, do you realize that would have been you if not for Doreen? Or, imagine what your life would be like if they hadn't decided to be therapists and had done something else with their lives. Or, do you know what those people sacrificed? How much they gave up to get you here? Of course, I always agreed with them because in my head, intellectually, I understood that all of it was true. But I never really felt it. In my gut, in my heart. I never really felt how great a gift I had been given because of what they had sacrificed for me. While I don't know why it took so long to happen, at least it did, and I finally felt a massive sense of gratitude in the pit of my stomach, in my heart for what they had done for me. It was about 9 months ago. I was 18 years old and I had a really great day at work. I was just made Employee of the Month at the grocery store where I work. I had just gotten my first semester grades in college, which were very good, and I overall just had a really great day. It occurred to me that none of the things I had done that day would have been possible without Cart and Dr. Brown-Pichet's help. College, work, driving my truck to a friend's house, none of it would be happening. I got home from work that night, and I went to my mother and said, the next time you talk to them, tell them I said thank you. Thank you for everything. At first she didn't know what I was talking about, but she got it after a few seconds and started to cry. She hugged me and said, don't worry, they already know. I told them. I'm told, but I don't really remember, that when I was 4 years old, one of my therapists really liked the song by the band Oasis called Wonderwall and taught me how to sing it. I guess it was super funny. My mom always heard my struggles with the words of that song, and they dedicated it to me when I graduated from high school. I thought it was nice, but what is a Wonderwall anyway? My mom said it's someone who gives up everything to do something that everyone else thinks is impossible. From what I have been told, it has been a very hard fight to get this kind of care funded and accepted to the point that it is now. And I have been told that CART has had a major role in getting this kind of care to many, many children. I thank you for all that you have sacrificed to help me and those like me. So, at this time, I think it is only fitting to dedicate those same words from the song Wonderwall back to CART, and especially to Dr. Doreen Brown-Pichet. Here it goes. And all the roads you had to walk were winding, and all the lights that led you here are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how, because maybe I know you were the ones that saved me, and after all, you're my Wonderwall.
I just go to the ugly cry. Because you know what? There was a time, I know that there are probably many of you that are watching, and in fact, somebody who wrote in a question from YouTube that I'm going to take in just a second, we are going to go over. There was a time when I didn't know if my son was ever going to speak. And then my son had started to speak by the time I was at this event and saw Brett get up there and speak. And I didn't realize that by the age of 19, I mean, I'm somebody who taught college theater. I teach neurotypical people how to stand up and do that, and it's not easy for neurotypical people. For a 19-year-old who was nonverbal to get up and give that speech in that room, you can't see the room, but I was there. I can tell you it was intimidating. And to get up and be able to make eye contact with the audience and appreciate their reaction in the moment, huge, right? And I remember, I mean, Jem must have been, 7 when I saw Brett give this speech, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, if there was a chance that my son could ever stand up and give that kind of a presentation. And, you know, my son's 14 and he's giving presentations now. Not at this level, I gotta be honest, you know, but he's got 4 or 5 years to catch up to where Brett was. I'm just telling you guys it's possible. It's a lot of hard work, but what else are you going to do, right? Why not to do the hard work? Okay, so Convade and R82 had been on the show, and they make this wonderful car seat, the Wallaroo that you're seeing. I mean, this is the creme de la creme, like the Saab of car seats. And we were going to give one away over the holidays, and I picked one with no address. Does that matter? Okay, so we have a winner. I just picked a Melinda Denman. We're going to be reaching out to you because you are the winner of one of these fabulous Wallaroo car seats. And if you're looking for a car seat, make sure that you check out Convade and R82. They are the makers. For a lot of our kids that are special needs, they need to be in a car seat longer. That's just a reality. And sometimes our kids are bigger statistically than other kids, or they're smaller and they need bolstering, and sometimes they have low muscle tone. You gotta have the right car seat. This is about safety first, and comfort as well. Sometimes our kids are in car seats and the circulation is being cut off in their legs. You're not going to see something like that happen in a Convade or an R82. Check out the Wallaroo, check out the Carrot. They have different seats for different sizes and needs, but these are amazing car seats that grow with your child and can be customized. So check it out. But the winner is Melinda Denman, and we'll find where you are. Okay, so we're past time, but I just don't want to leave it. You guys had written in so many questions. Somebody wrote in on YouTube and said, my son, 3.6 years old, has mild autism. I went through so many intervention centers, and all parents there have almost the same comments. Not any improvements. I don't know where you're going, but please go online and look at centerforautism.com. Click on the locations tab and see if there is a center within 30 to 50 miles from you, because my goodness, it's worth it. You're not going to find parents saying that there's no improvement there. Oh, okay. I'll get to that. Samantha's just talking to me in my ear. Okay, so, but I want to say to you that there are a couple of things that you have to keep in mind. That with ABA, you have to do it long enough and often enough. If you're going to do ABA, you can't just go in and say, I'm not seeing improvements after 3 weeks or even 3 months. You should start to see some pretty massive improvements around 3 months, but sometimes it takes that long to get things moving. Different for different kids, right? But don't just think that you can do 5 hours of ABA and that's going to do it. For a 3.5-year-old, you really need to be in that 30 to 40 hours a week. And then you need to be following through on it when they're at home yourself. You need to learn these techniques, but you will see improvement. All kids are not going to improve at the same rate, and all kids are not going to end in the same place, but all kids will make improvement. That happens. Okay, so this parent was also asking about stem cell. Okay, here's where we are as far as I understand about stem cell research right now. You can't get funding for it, stem cell replacement for autism. There are parents that I know that have tried stem cells when they had saved the stem cells from the child's birth. And in some of those cases, the children have made some pretty substantive improvements, and in some case, not. I have not yet heard from a parent who did stem cells that didn't come from their child with any huge improvements. I'm waiting to hear. I know there's a big research study being done in, I believe, in Texas right now, and we're waiting to hear back the results of it. So it's still, for me, a little iffy, and it's not being covered by insurance, so it's very expensive. So proceed with caution. Next comment we had from YouTube. I don't enjoy cure or recovery. I'm high functioning, whatever that means, because my executive function is quite bad. I feel like it's more coping and growing. I can't imagine not being autistic. And I started the show by saying that I have come to a place of acceptance. And I will be honest with you, it's easy for me to come to a place of acceptance about autism's role in our life because my son is doing so well. I don't know that I would be in acceptance if he wasn't, and let me be abundantly clear about that. But I can definitely see now how people can be on different sides of this and say, oh, autism isn't something to, be concerned about, because if you are able to do the things that you want in your life and you have a brain that is wired for autism, to me, it's no longer a disability. But when it is disabling, then there are things that we can do about it. I myself have some pretty intensive executive function issues. But I'll tell you what, I read through skills because I needed to for my child, and I learned, and I'm doing better with my executive function things. So I'm able to host a show and follow through on things and occasionally stumble and then apologize and do better the next time. So just know that here at Autism Live, I don't know what words to use anymore. I don't believe that autism ever goes away. I think that people who have autism, their brains are wired differently, and that it very much can be a benefit. But only if there aren't things that are in that person's way that are meaningful to them and meaningful to the people who love them. So we devote our time to finding ways to remove the obstacles, not remove the autism, but to remove the autism disorder. Because what you're left with is a brain that functions differently, and we need that in our world. We do. But there are some very real disabling aspects that are a potential with an autism wired brain. And that makes things very difficult for the person who is wired that way. And I have seen the pain on those people's faces and on their caregivers and the people who love them. And that's what we want to try to remove. Not eradicate the different way of thinking and looking at things, but just the disabling aspects. So I hope that that's clear, and I hope that that is in alignment with what you're talking about. Okay, and then another person wrote, I know this isn't happy, but there was a teenager who killed some of his family on New Year's, and they have said that he's autistic. I'm worried about the vilification that's happening. Every time this happens, people always start saying autistic people are murderers. Obviously, some are because we are people, but not all autistics are murderers. And I, too, share your concern about that. I hate it when we have some sort of and I'm very aware of the story that you're talking about. I hate it when immediately people go to and try to label and say, oh, well, this person was a loner, so maybe they were on the autism spectrum. There is such a thing as people being sociopaths and having nothing to do with autism. And I really hate it when people in the news automatically diagnose someone without there being a diagnosis, because I do think it vilifies individuals who are on the autism spectrum. So I too share your concern. We had not actually talked about this story yet because I have been waiting for us to get some substantive news to see whether it even makes sense to talk about it on Autism Live. But you're right. If people are rushing to a diagnosis and saying, oh, it is something that society looks at and goes, oh, well, I'll bet that, this is something to be feared. And we need to be very clear as a community that people with autism are people, as you said. And that means you're going to meet all kinds of people, and they're going to have all different levels of difficulty. But it is much more likely statistically that a person with autism is going to be a victim than be someone who is abusive. It just is. The science is in on that. So we'll stick together on that. All right. We've had so many people who've written in and said thank you. It was a good show today, you guys. I so enjoyed the interaction with all of you and with all of our guests. I hope that we had something for you. If we didn't, write in and tell us what you'd like to see, because that we love it when you interact with us. We are going to be back next Wednesday, and guess what? I know I've promised you this a couple of times and it hasn't happened, but as far as I know, fingers crossed, we are having Dr. Grant Pichet for Ask Dr. Doreen on Wednesday morning, and she's going to answer your questions. And we've got some other great guests that are going to be here with you next week. It's going to be a big one, so stay tuned. Sign up to be on our newsletter on our website so that you can get the postcard that comes every week telling you who's going to be on the show. And please like us on Facebook. I'm going to be back next Wednesday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.